Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, those good-smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, help us out. Take just a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like what we're doing, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, let's get to this week's guest, thru hiker, trail runner, and holder of the fastest known time on the River to River Trail in Illinois, Connor Chapdelaine. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, Connor. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Thanks for the welcome. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Now, I know I mentioned thru hiker in the intro, and we're going to talk about some of those long trails that you've done. But typically on the podcast, we only go by trail names if possible. So have you picked up a trail name along the way?
Yes, very early. In my first week on the AT, coming down to Hiawassee, I picked up Jackrabbit.
Jackrabbit. And you have to tell us the story behind the name. How did you get Jackrabbit?
Yeah, so early on, I realized I like to hike fast, and fast early on isn't even that fast. But I was hiking with a few people, was in the front, and the morning comes where we got to get busy down to the shuttle down at the gap there to get into Hiawassee, right? So we're at the Blue Mountain Shelter right there at the top, and we got to scurry down. Well, I overslept, and I didn't want to miss that shuttle into town. So I knew I had to hustle down. So I packed my big old 65 liter and started going as fast as I could down the side of that mountain. And it's like switchbacks down to the road, and you can see the road, hear the traffic. And I'm about halfway down, and I'm coming up behind a guy. And I'm like, yo, power cycle, I'm coming down. And he just steps over, and here I come flying by, kick a root, and explode. Like, go tumbling down the side of the mountain. My pack's like half unzipped, stuff goes everywhere. And someone had suggested Jackrabbit the night before, and he got a big kick out of coming up to me, and he was like, Jackrabbit, huh? And I was like, something like that. And then he goes down, tells that story to everyone who's trying to catch the same shuttle, and the rest is history.
That's fantastic. You thought you were on a kind of a speed course there, hit a route, and everything just fell apart.
Yeah, it was over from there. I mean, I had like the classic hip belt pockets and both unzipped. And, I had some essential items for a safety meeting in there, and they disappeared into the mountain. And next thing you know, it was over.
That is some fall if everything becomes unzipped and things just go flying, never to be found again.
Yeah, I was down in the brush. We had lost the trail a bit. I, went off the flat of the trail and was chilling down the slope.
Ouch. And you know what? It's amazing. I've had that same experience where I can see the road. I can see where I need to be, and I can see my car in the parking lot, right? I'm finishing up a loop, and I see the car in the parking lot, and yet the design of the path, you're still like an hour away. I mean, it's just infuriating sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And I could hear everyone down there, so I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like, I got like 30 more seconds. Like, I know the shuttle's not there at this moment. So I was like, I got to keep going. And then you finally get enough vision where you can see down there, and you're like, okay, now I'm a little bit safer. Yeah, classic.
Yes. Now, we're going to take this whole trail metaphor and extend it throughout the episode. So we're on a journey right now, Jackrabbit. We're on the trail, you and I. We're going to have some conversation. We're going to talk some trail, talk some Type 2 fun. And along the way, I want you to think of the episode as this journey in the wilderness. I'm going to call you Jackrabbit. You call me Doc. I'm going to be on the lookout for a trail name for the episode. If you say something funny or interesting or peculiar, that just might end up being the episode title. So be careful what you reveal tonight, all right?
I like it. Are we Nobo or Sobo on this journey?
We are heading, we're traditional. We're going to go Nobo. It's going to be a Nobo hike. Although, you know what, we may have to bail out and maybe do a flip flop. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll check conditions. We'll check conditions.
Check conditions. That's right. Now, Jackrabbit, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
I have. I listened to the episode with Jeff, and that was a trip because clearly a bit of tongue in cheek, and that was my first episode, so I didn't know what to expect, and it escalated to where I was like, I had to text him. I was like, Jeff, I was like, I was like, are you serious? I was like, I can't tell. I was like, I wanna. If you are serious, like, very cool. If you're not, no. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, the Jeff that Jackrabbit is referring to is Jeff Garmeyer, a friend that we have in common. He is a friend of the podcast. He's been on several episodes. In fact, spoiler alert, the last 2 years on April 1st, he has come on and done kind of an April 1st prank episode. And so Jackrabbit is referring to his latest iteration of the April 1st episode. I've had a few comments sent my way saying, you know what, I was so into this and I was going to get that app. And then I realized the second half of the episode that this was all April Fools. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. If you haven't heard it, you got to go check it out. The dead giveaway for me, there was many parts. He was like, when this is made, he's like, we have FKTs, and he was like, what? I was like, speed. I was like, and then he's like, we've simulated bear attacks. I was like, that seems curious.
Simulated bear attacks. That was the dead giveaway for Jackrabbit. Nice.
Exactly.
Now, I just want to make sure that you are familiar with the format of the episode here. We do have a segment towards the end of every episode called the Hiking Hack, and that's where I'm going to turn to you, Jackrabbit, and ask you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised when we get there.
Sure, of course. I'll be thinking now.
Okay, don't give it up too early, though. You don't want to be stuck at the end having given up all your wisdom, and now you're on the hook.
Okay. I'll keep a few tricks up my sleeve. I think I have a couple aces in the pocket that there's a lot of stuff that you can know, but I think there's a few hiker trash secrets that people that they may not want to know, but they're gonna know.
Okay, and you know what? You bring up hiker trash. You are on Hiker Trash Radio, and so I'm just going to ask you point blank: are you hiker trash?
I think I can put on the civilized face that I'm not, but deep down, like when you get out there, I'm so quick. Like just slather me in mud. Like yes, the answer is yes. I want to charge outside your gas station and drink unfiltered water at the top of the summit.
Underneath those couple layers of civilization, there is hiker trash in Jackrabbit.
Yes, and it stinks, Doc. It stinks. It's trying to get out.
That is the true sign of hiker trash, is the stink. Now, you mentioned charging at the gas station or drinking unfiltered water at the top. I always follow up that question with, is there a hiker trash moment in your history? Was there a moment somewhere along the trail where you engaged in some activity and you thought to yourself, okay, I've made it. I'm here. I am truly hiker trash because I'm doing this.
Yes, yeah. It's a pretty good little story. It's a bit PG-13. There was some weed smoked, but it was legal if that counts. But yeah, I was alone in the AT section of New York, which is quite small, but there's a tiny little town it goes through. I wish I could remember the name of it. But you have to go to the general store there to get a permit to camp in their tiny little park. So I rolled in alone, I camped alone, and I'm in their tiny little park. And basically, like the fencing of this park is, each section is shared with like a different backyard. I'm like, damn. And it's like 8:30, there's kids playing in all the backyards. And then there's me who hasn't had a haircut or a shave in 5 months sitting there. And I'm like, dang, I was like, I'm poor. I was like, I don't have anything good to eat. So I was like, just boiling on my stove, eating ramen, sitting around. And I'm like, there was a lot of sunlight left in the day, so I started playing on the equipment. And then like I'm sitting in the porta potty in this park after like riding the swing for an hour, and I was like, damn, I need a shower. I'm in the porta potty, I stink, like my ramen's waiting for me. I was like, this is it. Like this is peak hiker trash. I'm like, and the whole time I'm surrounded by, like I said, civilized families and enjoying their platonic life.
Hiding out in the porta potty, just living your best.
Yeah, exactly that. Just trying to scheme up a way of how I'm gonna do laundry in this town with no laundromat.
Now, I've talked to a lot of people, and we're going to get there for you, but I just want to point out that I've talked to a lot of people who remember their first encounter with a thru hiker. And I'm just thinking of you in that park adjacent to all these backyards and the kids playing back there. Did any kids pop their heads over the fence? And that was a defining moment for them where they said, you know what? This is the guy that I want to emulate. This is the guy I want to be when I get older. I mean, it could be a life-changing experience.
Yeah, it was them walking down the sidewalk back to their homes while I come out of the porta potty that's right outside the entrance of their park and then walk back into the closed park where my tent's waiting for me. They go, that guy's got it figured out.
They are still telling the story of that stroll down the sidewalk to their buddies in school to this very day. Congratulations.
I'm proud. I'm proud. I'll be the dirty guy that emerged from the random porta potty in their small town. It's a privilege.
All right. Hey, let's get to our first segment.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
That's right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the Ultralight Backpacking Gear Company, 6 Moon Designs. Now, Jackrabbit, I love to talk about gear on the podcast, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest adventure gear. So if you were preparing for your next adventure, and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you'd insist on being packed? Give me all the details on that piece of gear. Tell me why you've got to have it out there. And this could be any kind of item. It could be gear, it could be apparel, it could be a luxury item. So, Jackrabbit, what is that item in your toolkit?
Man, this is a really good question. And I thought hard about it. But I think the big thing for me is like I don't think I'm too attached. Actually, let me take that back. There is one item that comes with me every time. It's actually a bobblehead. And it is a bobblehead of Pedro Martinez, who was a pitcher in the MLB in the early 2000s. My family has big Boston fans, Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins, the whole jazz. But anyways, 2004, the Red Sox broke the curse, and Pedro was their ace. And yeah, it was awesome. My dad loves him, so he gave him to me before I went to college. I kept him in my pocket for big tests. So when I finally decided to leave for the AT, I was like, no way, Pedro's not coming. So yeah, and then I actually lost Pedro on the descent, running down the descent of San Jacinto. I was like hauling ass because it's really long, really graded. And anyways, I got a new one though. My dad has found another one. It's an old Pedro that used to come in a Post cereal box. Yeah, it just sat on our mantle for so long. So that's always with me.
Wow. Jackrabbit, I've heard a number of items described being carried in someone's backpack, and I've thought to myself, that's pretty odd. That's strange. And the record holder, before you came on the podcast, I talked to a French guy who he always had to bring a charcuterie board with him, a full-size charcuterie board, because he's French, and that's just the way he rolls. You got to be able to lay out the food on a nice space there. So he brought that charcuterie board with him every hike. But now, having heard that a Pedro Martinez bobblehead has been out there in your pack on the trail, that might be my new favorite. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if Pedro, the real guy, knows, but he's seen a lot of East and West Coast. He's got some good summits. It was, he had a breezy time on Whitney. He's been around.
Now, I heard you list all the Boston teams except for the Patriots.
Yeah, well, we are Patriots fans, definitely. But that is always seemingly the one that gets me the most in trouble. Not anymore these days, I guess, but definitely growing up, it was everybody's favorite team to hate as far as NFL goes. And I get it. Nobody likes the winner. So
if everybody hates a team, I mean, there's a reason for that. So you're in good company. Exactly. Now, when I come across Boston fans and specifically Patriots fans, I have to ask, did you become a semi-fan of Tampa Bay when Tom went down there?
Yes, I'd definitely say a semi-fan is the appropriate term. I was not keeping up with their season or anything like that, but I was definitely cheering for Tom when it came time to go for the ring, no doubt.
That first season, he had to learn a whole new playbook, had to learn a whole new offense. He's on the road in the playoffs. That road playoff run going through, I forget the teams, but I know that he was on the road against Aaron Rodgers. He was on the road against somebody else, and he beats Kansas City in the Super Bowl. That had to be one of the most epic playoff runs in history.
Yeah, I mean, insane. I think like if there was any question, which I don't understand how it could be like answered right there. Yeah, he's the GOAT. He fumbled Giselle, but that's another conversation.
Nice. All right. Hey, let's move on to our next segment.
It's the hiking pole.
It's the hiking pole, and that's pole spelled with 2 L's like a survey, not like the things you carry in your hands out there. I'd like to explain that to all of my guests because, I think I'm pretty clever for coming up with that, and their reaction is pretty much the same as yours, just kind of a blank stare. So this is a 7-question survey that's going to help me give you a score on the sanity scale from 1 to 100, with 1 being completely insane, 100 being completely sane. And I have to tell you, Jackrabbit, there's an automatic 30-point deduction for anybody who's carrying bobbleheads out there. So your top possible score tonight is 70.
Okay. All
right.
I'll take it. I like a good handicap.
Okay, good. All right. So these are 7 questions, all related to hiking, and it's not rapid fire. This is like you're back in high school. You're going to give me your answer, and then you have to show your work. You have to explain why you answered the way you did. All right? That's going to help me with my scoring.
Okay, deal. Do I get an eraser? Can I backtrack maybe?
It's up to you. I will let you finish your answer, and I will score you accordingly, so don't worry about that.
Okay, I like it.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. When you're out on the trail and when you're not passing up other people, you're actually hiking with other people, and you're talking, you're having conversations out there, what are your top 3 topics of conversation? What do you like to talk about out there?
Good question. I think a lot of the times people who are hiking with me have done a lot of other hikes. So I really like hearing about random trails that I haven't done, especially ones I've never heard of. Like starting on the AT, I'd never heard of the PCT or the CDT, and then those are seemingly obvious at that point, and then it just goes on and on and on until you realize there's all sorts of little stuff out there. So I'd definitely say trails. I think the obvious one in number 2 is food, which is like super dangerous. And then number 3, favorite topic to talk about while out on the trail. How about not a favorite topic, but a favorite game to play on trail? Like
Sure.
And it's like a talking game. Okay. Have you ever heard of fart baseball?
I have not heard of fart baseball. No. Explain, please.
Okay. It's pretty hiker trash. So
It kind of sounds self-evident, but I'm gonna let you explain it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer that foot pedal locomotion is really going to get all that stuff started around. So so it's easy. Rules are easy. You can't play alone. You got to have a pitcher and a batter. So one person farts, that's a single, and now it's like their inning, right? They're up to bat. So every subsequent fart, so you can unless you rapid fire here, if you rapid fire, your single turns into a double, triple, quad, home run. You go all the way around. So it's about control. So if you can pull out 4 quickies, that's the move. So you don't want to just drop one bomb. That's still a single, even if it's a loud single. So anyways, but if the other person interjects any of your farts with a fart, it's immediately bases are cleared. Now they're on single. So yeah, it's about keeping good momentum. It's about consistency. It's about a lot of the things that you need to have on trail to see it to the end.
Oh, this is awesome. A brand new game for me out on the trail. I love the rules. It's not even like 3 outs and you change sides. It's you get one in there to break the consistency. It's your turn up at bat.
Yeah, exactly. And you can catch someone off guard. Like, you pass some gas and then you just say single and they're like, what's that mean? And they don't even know. They're fielding the team in fart baseball.
Yeah, and while they are trying to figure it out, you are rapping out successive hits. So
exactly, you're quickly learning the strat.
Now, the pressure to string together consecutive hits, has that ever led to an accident?
It's a dangerous game. They say that's what makes you a through hiker. Um, it's dangerous, but like ultra running, you gotta have the right nutrition. Something like Lenny and Larry's cookie, that's gonna set you up for success. Any kind of plant-based protein is really gonna lay the foundation for the strong 9 innings.
Yeah. Now I'm glad you said it was a dangerous game because the title of this episode almost became Fart Baseball. I think it's outweighed a little bit now by Dangerous Games with Connor, Jackrabbit, Chapdelaine.
I like it. Yeah, I'm well versed in dangerous games. I like to take risks.
Okay. All right. Hey, back to the poll, hiking poll. Question number 2. In all your time out there, what is the best trail name you've encountered?
Man, there's two. There's one that I think is only funny to me, so it's kind of a not as good story. But still gonna tell it. And the other one's Jackpot, which I really liked a lot. And Jackpot could mean a lot of things, but this guy in particular had a famous history of always managing to dig where someone else's cat hole was. So lo and behold, dig a couple strikes, bam, jackpot.
He's a treasure
Yeah,
hunter.
I've heard a couple spin-offs. Yeah, exactly. I've heard a couple spin-offs, names like that. Yeah, it's classic. And then the other one was Man Alive. And I think part of the fun in this was that me and a couple friends saw a trail log that was signed with this, and we tried to deduce what Man Alive could possibly mean. So we finally meet this guy. It's actually the beginning of the AT. We run into him in the Smokies. He's sitting around a fire, and he's talking, and somebody calls out his name, Man Alive. We're like, hey, you're the guy. Like, we got to know your story. So, like all good trail stories, we gathered around the campfire they had made, and he laid it out for us. And basically, he was a hilarious guy, and he was the fastest man alive, the strongest man alive, the smartest man alive. Basically, whenever the scenario came about itself, he was the guy for it. So, kind of like in a funny way, they'd be like, "Hey, can anybody go grab some sticks?" He's like, "I'll go grab all the sticks because I'm the strongest man alive." And he scrambled off, grabbed some more sticks for the fire. So, yeah, I really got a big kick out of that at the time.
Man Alive, also known as fill in the blank, right? You just fill in the blank in front of Man Alive, and that's the guy.
Exactly. Yeah, he was all the things, and he had the confidence for it too.
He was all the things. Another great title candidate. All right. Hey, Jackrabbit, question number 3. Toilet paper, bidet, leaves, snow, sticks, rocks. What is your preference out there?
Man, I'm a firm believer in the toilet paper. It's super light. I think the bidet people really, I think they ride high on this super clean entity, but I don't want any water bottle that's going near anything. I don't know. It's like gravity. Unless you got some sort of weird upside down orientation going, your hand's still under there and it's still coming back down. I don't like it. I don't like it. So I'm gonna continue rocking with toilet paper. I think it's the superior wiping product.
Do you think the bidet people kind of look down their noses a little bit at the rest of us?
Yeah, I think part of it. I think it could be more ultralight because they just have the nozzle. I think that's part of it. I think it's also they're clearly rich in resources. They have enough water to waste on something like that. I think it's kind of like a wealthy over the poor, like the poor carry toilet paper. The peasants.
That is an excellent point. I mean, when you're out on the trail, and money doesn't really mean a whole lot on the trail, but in some cases, in some spots, water is like wealth out there. If you got a lot of water, you are the wealthiest person out there, and they've got water to burn, right? They're not gonna ingest this. They're not gonna drink it. They're gonna use it to clean their butts. So I mean that is a fair point.
Yep. If you're doing the PCT desert section with the bidet, you're just flexing on everybody. I think your devilfish is enemy number one. You got to lay off the water caches, but yeah, I mean it's really a statement.
They're flexing. I love it. Okay. Question number 4: breakfast in camp, on trail, or no breakfast for you?
Absolutely no breakfast. Well, I'll say this, does a Cliff Bar count as breakfast? I'm gonna eat it once I start hiking, yes. But we're This is team no boil in the morning. We got no time for that.
You are full of these one-liners. Team no boil. All right. Question number 5. Do you prefer solo hiking or hiking with others? Hiking with a tramley?
I really prefer the walking portion by myself. I think part of it's pacing, and then part of it's just like solitude. But I definitely prefer to camp with other people. I don't care if it's the same people over and over, but I'm always going to be, on the AT. It's really easy. You can naturally congregate to the shelters, and like, if you stop at a shelter, you're almost guaranteed to see somebody. If you're hiking during regular hiking season. So it's just easy to have company when you're cooking dinner and going to bed and so on. But I will say, yeah, final answer, I like walking by myself, but I definitely prefer to camp. I would say no tramley though. A little too many expectations.
There are probably quite a few listeners today who are maybe day hikers, who are thinking about, getting into maybe longer hikes, overnight, section hiking possibly, maybe even doing something longer than that. And the day hikers may be thinking to themselves, well, I thought hiking with others is, you're with them all the time. What is this? What's he talking about walking alone? Can you explain that for folks who don't understand necessarily the dynamic out there on a longer hike?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're going out for a day hike on the weekend, especially with somebody, typically, like, you're going to spend time with that person, so you'll probably spend most of the time with them, obviously walking and camping. But like through hiking, it's a longer time. And then to me, and this is super subjective, everybody's different. I always know that I'm gonna probably bump into a lot of the same people over and over. So I'm less stressed about seeing them every single day. So I know I'll see them probably at the next town if I take a Zero or whatever the case may be. But yeah, you just kind of hopscotch back and forth with each other on trail. And I think that's part of the stuff I like, is like when it's a bit unexpected. That's always really fun.
Okay, well said, sir. Question number 6 out of 7. I'm going to give you 3 items, and I want you to rank them in your order of preference. So you're going to say, okay, this is my favorite of the items. Here's my next favorite, and here's my least favorite. All right, you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Here we go. 5 miles severe uphill, 5 miles severe downhill, 20-mile road walk.
I'm going to go 5 miles uphill, preference, 5 miles downhill second, 20-mile road walk last, definitely.
Okay, now you surprised me right there, Jackrabbit, because I'm looking at your Instagram page right now, and it says, I like to run up and down mountains, but really more down. So I'm surprised that you picked uphill first and then downhill.
Okay, so I'll say that uphill is more like, is my strength. I think I'm faster, or I gain more time on uphills. So I would prefer that, I guess, in like a race context. But yeah, downhill is clearly easier. It's less work. And then the road walk, I really don't mind roads unless I have a pack on, and then it kind of, beats your feet up pretty bad.
Okay. Question number 7, last question in the hiking poll. What's on your head when you're out there? Ball cap, floppy hat, straw hat, sun hoodie, no hat, bucket hat? I mean, what are you rocking out there?
I kind of get a good alternation. I'm definitely a hat guy. Got one on right now. On the AT though, I was rocking bandana. I didn't hear that listed in that. And I'm a big bandana fan on trail. But yeah, I definitely did bandana for a while. I gotta have something to get the sweat. And then BCT, I was rocking the hat, had a little soft bill dry fit, and man, it got gross. That bill had no integrity. It was rough. It was a very oblong shaped hat.
Very hiker trashy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you gotta look like you just found something on the ground and put it on.
That was one of my guest responses. I like a found hat.
Yeah, I think that's there's something to that. I wore a pair of sunglasses that made me look like 70s mafioso, and they were from a laundromat. I loved them, and it was a shame when I lost them, but I got a lot of joy when I found out someone else had found them and also began to wear them, because they were masterpieces and they did not need to go to waste. Another hiker had found them.
It sounds like a number of items have passed through your possession. You've come into items, you've lost items. It just kind of comes and goes.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, that ties back to my answer about my favorite piece of gear. Like, I think I definitely have a bit of reputation among friends of leaving items. Sometimes tragically, sometimes funnily. But the tragicallys have been dramatic, and there's more funnies though, and there's an equal number of I left it. Psych, it was at the bottom of my pack the whole time after so much stress.
Sounds like you have strong organizational skills. So, hey, let me get to the
Exactly.
scoring of the hiking pole. This is the mathematical portion of the episode. I've got to take my shoes off, use all 20 digits. It's a very complicated formula, Jackrabbit. I've got to carry the 2. We're going to multiply that by pi. Going to divide that by root 5. And then I'm going to make a slight adjustment for the number of jackpots you hit this morning. And I come up with a score of 41. 41.
41. Is that 41 out of 42? I forget what the top was.
So the scale was 1 to 100, 1 completely insane, 100 being completely sane. You started off with a 30-point penalty for carrying a bobblehead out there, and you ended up at 41. So you're south of the midline. You're just slightly higher than Garmire. So
okay, I like this. I seem very hireable. That's how I read that. I'm very civilized.
yes, most people take their score on the hiking pole and they put it on their resume. They include that on all of their job applications. Say, hey, Doc said I was 41. Hire me.
That seems like a wise choice. I gotta ask though, how much is the deduction for wiping your butt with rocks? I heard that's an option. I'm curious.
Yeah, if you go with rocks or leaves, that's like another 15 points down. I mean, you took the safe route. You stuck with TP. You know, we kind of agreed that the bidet people are kind of looking down their noses and flexing on us. So I mean, you got some points there. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice
Okay. All right. I can take that. Yep. I wipe like in a civil manner, so I'll allow it.
Yeah, and if on your next hike, if you find a hat with a 41 on the bill, I mean, it's just fate.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I got to get more found items in my kit. I think that's gonna help me get off the civil scale, get back into a nice 60s area. I think that's where I want to be.
Okay. Now, hey, before we get too far down the trail tonight, Jackrabbit, let's back up a little bit. We'd love to hear about your background, where you grew up, what kinds of activities you involved in as a kid, and how in the world did you get involved in the thru hiking cult?
Yeah, good questions. So I grew up in Arkansas, Arkansan. My parents are from Mass, ended up in Arkansas. Both my brothers were born in Mass too, so that's how we're all Boston fans. But yeah, grew up there and graduated there, high school there, went to college at Arkansas State, got my degree in biology. Immediately graduated and then got a job at a regulatory weed lab. So check this out. In every state, if you cultivate weed, like if you're a full-on producer, you have to test your stuff to make sure it doesn't have any contaminants, right? Pesticides, heavy metals, so on, as well as potency, like if you have gummies, all this other stuff. We do all that. Liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry. Yeah, it's cool stuff. But I do the micro side of that. So I test for E. coli, salmonella, yeast and mold, a few other guys. So yeah, started doing that. Did that for 2 years. We got a new lab director at the lab there. He comes in. We take him to the normal place we take all our new employees. It's this delicious Thai place for lunch. On the wall there, map of the AT. And I talked to him like, oh yeah, had to take this environmental law class. In it, I had to read Walk in the Woods, Bill Bryson. Anyways, so I'm like, oh, yeah. I read this book, ATs, long trail, people do it, pretty crazy. And he's like, I did that. And I'm like, what did you just say? I'm like, you're just some guy. Like, you're just like some guy. What do you mean you did it? Like, you walked that whole thing? Sure enough. And I asked him a trillion questions about it. Like, how? What did you do to prepare? You must have got on a treadmill every day, 7 days a week for 6 months. He's like, nah, I just bought a tent and went camping once for 4 days, a couple weeks before, and it just went. And I was like, this is nuts. And all I got from that conversation was he's just some guy I'm just some guy. I could do that. Like, so yeah. And then from then on, it was like pinching pennies, saving money, doing research. And by research, I mean like the first link on Google. I knew nothing. Like, and just went down the typical path that everyone does to their first through hike. Magical, do it. Don't go ultralight. Be massive. It's fun. Um, and yeah, eventually found my way out there in 2021 and clueless, no, like not an outdoorsy family, camped and slept in a tent maybe like less than a handful of times in my life and was just totally winging it. And I mean, I can think of 10 times I made an absolute fool of myself in the first 100 miles, like for doing many different things in strange ways. And yeah, I made it, and no one was surprised after like 500 miles because I was loving it.
Now we're going to hear about some of those 10 times you made a fool of yourself in the first 100 miles when we come back after the break. But before we get to the break, I have to tell you that something you said really struck me right there. And that is you looked at the guy and said, you're just some guy, which implies to me that you had this preconceived notion of thru hikers and what somebody would look like who had done the AT. And so what was that image in your mind of who a thru hiker was?
Yeah, I mean, like, so like I said, my only exposure to it at that point was a walk in the woods. And Bill Bryson's like, clearly makes it seem very difficult. It is, hiking in the dark when you write it out on paper is really tough, and it is. But, I think the difference is like mindset and having fun. But I think it was like this notion that you had to be insanely fit and determined and like, orienteering and mountaineering and you're out there in the absolute wild, you're not, it's way more remote and all these other things. And in the reality, it's so not that, right? Especially on the AT where so much access, so many road crossings, so many people, hikers, fellow through hikers, and so on. So it just kind of broke all that down. And he showed me, like I said, he showed me a ton of pictures. He actually had a like, I almost want to say like the threefold science fair poster board. It wasn't that, but it was close. And that like his mom had made him with all of his photos because he did it in the early 2000s. So he had like a disposable digital camera, had taken all these photos. She had blown them up. Anyways, put them all on this poster board. It was really nice. But he brought it, and I saw these pics, and I'm like, all of these are just dudes and chicks. Like, none of you are triathletes. Like, what am I looking at? Like, you all need a shave. Like, what's going on here? Like, and yeah, it just all came together that it's fun. Like, they had a lot of fun. It wasn't this big, like, none of the pictures were them like sweaty and bloody and dying. It was them sitting at a waterfall. It was them sitting around a picnic table. It was them having a blast, right? So it looked appealing and it looked possible.
And so this was your new boss, right?
Yeah, this was my new lab director. So we had the owner. He was there on site. So, but he was the next above me. Yeah, so I took orders from him.
Okay.
Very cool guy. Very wise.
Do you think that the new lab director, took offense when you said, "Wait, if you did the AT, I can do the AT because you're just some dude, man. I can do this then."
I'm gonna act like I didn't word it that way, but there's a high chance I did. But I hope he didn't. He's a pretty humble guy, and I think it's even cool looking back at those early times of the trails, and like, it's definitely still everything changes, but just looking at those pictures, the pack's so big, like everyone is like feral looking, like. I mean, it was truly, they were just roughing it out there. There's not all the infrastructure there is now. There's not all of the hostels and so on. I'm sure there was some. I'm not totally saying they were out there, but it was definitely different. And I was like, I knew I'd never experienced anything like that. But yeah, I think he took it to heart. He knew he was pretty accomplished. He has a PhD and he had done that. He was a boss.
Nice. All right. Hey, good place to take a quick break. We're going to hear from some sponsors, pay some bills. When we come back, we're going to get into a little more detail on your AT, your PCT hikes, and also want to talk about the river to river FKT. So listeners, stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And we are back, and man alive, we are talking to Jackrabbit, Connor Chapdelaine, and it has been a rollicking conversation so far. I'm looking forward to the second half here. You talked about your time on the AT, And I just want to get right back to it. You mentioned you could count 10 times where you looked absolutely foolish out there in the first 100 miles. You want to give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, I think one story is pretty classic. So I understood that the food needed to be hung. Like bears cannot float. If the food is hung, mission accomplished. Got it. That was a big check. So that part I got. What I didn't understand was how to get to that point. And also, somewhere out there, Archimedes or somebody's like shaking their head. I did not have a thorough understanding of physics. So, anyways, being the total scrub I was not carrying enough food. I had a little food bag and I wasn't carrying enough food. I'm prefacing with that because the way I hung my food bag was by throwing my whole food bag over the tree branch and then, letting it smack against the ground and then pulling it up. Got it. Okay. So fast forward to
You're also tenderizing the food in the bag by doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
And was Archimedes one of your trail family there? Was that his trail name?
Yeah. Actually, it was. He was present, and he was a physics major. So day 5 comes around. I've been doing this. I guess either I haven't been seen, and I definitely was hanging my food every single day. So I guess I hadn't been seen and blown my cover that I was clueless yet. So, yes, day 5 comes around. I'm hiking. We're with friends. There's a cute girl there, and I'm talking to her, and we're chatting. Everything's going great. She has a very large food bag. So, all right, we finish eating our dinner. Lovely. I'm going to go hang my food bag. I'm like, hey, would you like me to hang your food bag as well? I'm already going over to like the wooded area. No problem. So she's like, yeah, here it is. And it's like, the size of a 50-gallon drum. And it's like, here's this. So I was like, okay, thanks. And, I brace myself and squat and carry it over to the wooded area. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to what have I done? So, and the wooded area also, like the good trees for hanging, it was up a hill. So the shelter's at the bottom of this hill. And maybe if anyone knows the shelter, it's the last shelter before the road crossing into Franklin, North Carolina. I can't remember the name of it. So yes, going up this hill, and it starts taking time. I get mine up, and then like seemingly people are starting to notice that, like, what's he doing? Like, what's taking so long? And I haven't even thrown hers yet once. I'm like still navigating the best angle here. I'm like, should I shot put this? Is this like a hammer throw? Should I spin a couple times? So yeah, I finally get into position, and it's like a full squat jump. I got it like over my head, and we're just gonna go for it. And failed miserably. Her food comes back. I've now tenderized her food as well. Dreams crushed. And I come sliding down the hill into a large tree branch. To everyone going like, "What are you doing? What are we watching? We're not quite sure. Like, we can't even assume that you're trying to hang the food. You look that clueless." So yeah, that was definitely number one. And then somebody clearly showed me that you should tie the other end to a rock and throw the much more throwable rock over the branch. And epiphany. Wow, mind blown.
I love the fact that you're considering, should I do this like hammer throw? Give it a couple spins and get some momentum, and let the momentum do some of the work for me.
Yeah, exactly. I think Archimedes was down there giving me the head nod. He knew I was onto something.
All right, that is fantastic. Another example you have, or should we move on?
I think the other example is probably a time with my water filter. So also classic mistake. The funny part of this, I did have a Sawyer squeeze. Okay, so I started with the Sawyer squeeze, and I was told that was not the way. Little did I know it was. So anyways, I had instead this like nearly pound water filtration system. And it is platypus. it's a great water filtration system. If you're going on a short hike and your water source is 10 kilometers away and you're only making one trip. So I, unfortunately, that was not the case for me. So I always had to use this thing. And the big fail was I was hiking with a big group and we were all trying to get to camp and it was late and I was totally out of water and I knew it. But I knew that my water had to take like 20 minutes to filter. So I held everyone up so I could set it up. And basically, it's a gravity filter. So you have to hang one bag of dirty water, let it flow through the filter down into your clean bag. So we sat around while my water filtered and the sun went down and we would have made it to camp before it got dark. Instead, I held everyone up and the people I was hiking with. There's only a handful of us, and we made it after dark. Everyone was cooking. It was much less enthusiastic times, and I was like, noted. Like, that cannot be rushed to any capacity. Gravity does not go faster no matter what you do.
Now, what lessons can we take away from your experience out there, heading out there, enthusiastic, not a lot of maybe practical knowledge or, experience, but you ran into it with full force and had a fantastic time. I think if I'm going to draw a conclusion, it's that, you could prepare and prepare and prepare and prepare until you feel like you're ready to do it. And you've missed out on a lot of adventure where there's a lot of kind of on the job training that takes place on a thru hike.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with that. And I think, the way I would boil that down is to like expectations are the enemy. I don't want to know if something's going to be amazing. I don't want to know if something's going to be horrible. I kind of want to find out myself. I read a book, The Four Agreements, and it talks about this and just the power of like spoken word and how it can change how you perceive what's going to happen just by how someone tells you about it. And, even if the opinion's pretty benign, it'll still come to your mind when you experience it. So, yeah, I like to have no expectations because typically it's usually going to go that you think something's going to suck or you're told it's going to suck or it's really hard. And then you're like, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But yeah, if you don't look at it that way and you're not thinking of it that way at all, it won't be. You'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it potentially. So I think that's definitely true. And I think definitely on the AT, people, and I'm sure like a lot of people feel this way, but like comments on Gut Hook or Far Out and like, it's this way or that way and believe this, believe that, the hostel's dirty, the hostel's clean, all this other stuff. Like, just get it all out. Get it all. Let me go myself. Like, I'll make my own conclusions. Like, I don't want it your expectations.
Wow, that is top-notch trail wisdom right there. I hope you got something left for later on in the episode, but that was top-notch right there. That's fantastic. Now,
yeah, I don't know. That's like I really try to embrace that a lot, and like it can be really hard to break that, especially once it's already cut loose. Like even if maybe you learned the information unwillingly, then you're like, shit. Like now I know something about this. And something like that for me was like Goat Rocks. Someone was like, that's the best section of the PCT. Sorry, I just did the same thing I just said not to do. But I was like, what? I was like, dang. And then sure enough, I was like, got there and thought of it. Maybe and that's on the other good side, I guess, because that was a good self-fulfilling prophecy. It was really great. But yeah, it's like that you can kind of see where these things pop up all the time.
Yes, Goat Rocks, of course, is on the PCT. Before we leave the AT though and head to the PCT, let's get some details here.
Yes.
When did you start? When did you finish? How long did it take? How many zeros did you take? Do you know?
Yeah, I started March 6th. I finished, I think, August 9th. It sounds right to me. I think it was like 153 days. Yeah, probably 30 zeros. I took 7 days off in a row for a funeral, and then I just sprinkled them in everywhere. I didn't have anywhere to be. I didn't know what I was doing. I was meeting people. I think on the AT, I was much more on my own a lot. Just getting in and out of different groups of people. I wasn't necessarily like hiking with them or trying to camp with them, but naturally you see the same shade of people or the same group of people every day, because if they're doing the same mileage as you, you'll see at the next camp shelter or at the next shelter, especially on the AT because there's so many shelters where people naturally congregate. So there'll be a shelter at 20 miles and then one at 32. It's like, okay, everyone's going to be at that one at 20. So, yeah, being solo was really easy. So it took me 5 months, 30 zeros. Yeah, no rush. Good times.
And when people ask you about your AT experience, is there a go-to story that you find yourself telling more often than the others?
That's a really good question. I think a few different ones come to mind. I think one of my favorite things ever is trail birthdays, and that always comes to mind. 'Cause sharing a birthday with total strangers, I think like for some people, holidays and birthdays can be like a sad time if you really want to celebrate and you're far from family or whatever the circumstance may be. You know, it comes with like an expectation, right? You think it's going to be great, and then if it's not, you know, it's kind of a bummer. So, but birthdays on trail, I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by strangers. You don't really expect, you may not even have service to hear from your family. So it's like, yeah, like no one knows, who cares? But I think almost always, if the word gets out that it's somebody's birthday, you just see like the best side of people. Someone who, you know, it's like this guy knows this guy, but the other 9 people that just heard have no clue. Like who is this guy? What's his name? Jack in the Box? Okay, well I got like I can give him like 4 gummy bears. Like Jack in the Box walks up, knows one guy out of the group. He's like, "Hey, what's up?" And then everybody like showers this guy with kindness, or so on, or in town, or all these different things. So I'll definitely say on the Roan Mountain Shelter, surrounded with friends, we were. So that's the highest shelter on trail. It's really cool. I think it's in like a spruce fir forest. It's like a really unique habitat that is like really protected. So you can't even disperse camping. So it scrunched us together even more. But yeah, it was a guy named Roadrunner's birthday, and his parents had driven to the bottom of the mountain and had delivered McDonald's to him. So he scrambles down. They go get the McDonald's, bring it back up. We have like all these McDoubles, all of these fries, and we made him a little birthday cake. It was a Snickers bar with sticks shoved in for candles, and then fire starter on the end of the sticks for like sparking candles. Yeah, so hand delivered that to him. Yeah, it's just a really great moment. I think like encapsulates all my favorite parts of trail.
Nice. Love that. All right. So you finished the AT, and when do you decide that, you know what? Let's keep going. Let's do the PCT.
Instantly. I mean, before I even finished, it was like I knew that was so awesome. I knew there was other trails out there. I knew that I was like just on the tip of the iceberg. I was like, oh, I mean, like in the first like month I was home, as soon as I had some money in my pocket, I was like buying new gear, trying to get lighter, like trying to go further, faster. Yeah, I was so pumped and like immediately called my old job back at the lab. I was like, I know I kind of vacated my position, like, and you backfilled that position. That's cool. I get that. I was like, but if you have a job for me, I was like, let me know how much I'm going to get paid, and I'm so in. And I got right back to it, and worked there until next hiking season. And once again, like next spring came around, and I was gone.
And what were some of the biggest changes you made to your gear? What did you swap out?
Yeah, pack was probably the biggest thing. I went from Osprey 65 liter to Gossamer Gear G420. It was like a 42 liter pack. So my pack was just pretty empty at the end. I'd sent a lot of stuff home, and a lot of it's just preference. It's not necessarily buying a lot of ultralight gear, but for example, like on the AT, I didn't carry a rain jacket for a lot of it. Why? Because in the middle of the summer, it's 1,000,000,000,000 degrees and it's super humid, and that rain jacket is a vapor barrier, which means it's keeping the liquid in and out. So if you're under there sweating buckets, like you're gonna be just as wet and chafy as if you were getting rained on. So I would just prefer to get rained on. And you know, those kinds of choices. So you kind of learn what you want. But yeah, I got that pack. What else? I made a few choices I regret. I like was ready to die on the Camp Shoes Hill, and that was foolish. I regret that now. I look back on that, and I'm like, you don't need those.
And so for our listeners out there who maybe aren't familiar with camp shoes, what are camp shoes? And if you don't use camp shoes, what do you use?
So camp shoes, and this is especially true on the AT, where you typically have wet feet. Camp shoes enable you to navigate camp without having your actual hiking shoes or boots on. So if you have shoes or boots and they're wet all day, every day, and your socks, you just got to get those off. You're just going to have a lot of feet problems if you don't let your feet dry out. So if you continue to wear those at camp and you're somebody who spends a lot of time at camp, it's going to be a problem. So yeah, some people carry Crocs. Some people carry Zero as a brand that makes camp shoes. I don't want to say the brand because I don't want to put them on blast, but I bought their camp shoes. They were like super mega ultra light. It's like I'm wearing like a spring roll rice paper on my foot. I'm like, yeah, super cool. And no, of course not super cool. Like they were trash. And they did not last. And if you stepped on a rock, anything, if you weren't walking on smooth pavement, you felt it, It was like corrugated cardboard. So anyways, no bueno. No bueno. If you're going on I'll say this, if you're like weekending to a beach, definitely carry some Crocs, essential item. Get something out there. But I think through hiking, camp shoes are out. Wear your hiking shoes around camp, or just chill in your tent. Don't walk around. Get all your items and get in your tent and chill. Let those feet dry.
Now, what about barefoot hiking, or at least barefoot camping? I had a guy on, Ken Posner, went by the trail name Barefoot Ken because he hiked in bare feet.
Whoa. I met a guy in Oregon named Turtle who was also hiking in bare feet. That is something else. There's I think you could do a whole podcast on footwear that's completed in hiking. There is a guy who hiked the PCT the same year as me named Courier who did it in thong flip-flops for the most part. And he had like a 5-liter backpack. Yeah. And then a person I was also hiking with did it in Crocs. Or I'm sorry, not Crocs, Chacos. Crocs would be crazy, but possible. I think Jeff Garmeyer would do it.
Garmeyer would do it in Crocs. You got that right. And Courier in flip-flops, that makes that spot between my big toe and my second toe, that makes it hurt just thinking about walking 2,600 miles in flip-flops. Come on.
Yeah, and I'll say this, in his teeny tiny, it may have been like 12 liters. I may have exaggerated. It was like a 12-liter pack. But anyways, inside this, he would carry a pair of trail runners because for passes in the Sierras, he knew when to get serious. He knew when to get serious.
All right. Now, tell me your thoughts on the PCT versus the AT. How different was the experience for you?
Man, I think this is a loaded question. And I think the most loaded part of it, I think that the biggest difference is first through hike to second. And I think that is where like the opinions about some of these trails happen. I think the AT is commonly a first through hike for people. So it creates a lot of like mystique and all this other stuff. I love the AT. I love it a lot. I think it's more hiker trash than the PCT. I think the PCT is a bit posh. That may be a hot take, but it's a little West Coast. It's clearly very beautiful. It's like the trail is like the people. Clearly very beautiful. Undeniably doing great things. We love it. We're big fans. But like something about me needs a little like hiker trash East Coast. Like I saw a funny meme that was like it was when someone says the whites, like it's just 4,000 feet just to hell. And it's like, and the whites like, you gotta respect us. And it's like, it's true. Like, you gotta respect those hiker trash whites. I think it brings out the more of the dirt bags. They're very different trails though.
Now, Jackrabbit, I think there's a little East Coast bias there in your response, and that's okay. But I want to point out
right.
that I did not ask you which trail you preferred, which one you liked better. I think that's a very bad question to ask somebody to compare, in terms of likability. Which trail did you like better? I think that's a bogus question. I didn't want to put that on you. I didn't want it to do that.
Sorry.
I asked how the experience differed. That's all I asked. Just pointing that out to our listeners.
Yes, very true. I will say I have been nominated as a recreational arguer. I like to get into these kinds of fun little debates. Everyone has their preferences, but how do they differ? Um, I mean, I think there's some obvious ones as far as like quote unquote difficulty. PCT's horse graded, all this other stuff. I think the big thing for me was like I think the shelter thing was like probably the biggest thing. I really, really enjoyed these natural congregation points. It was really nice always counting on being able to meet someone at a sit down point. Because a lot of the times in the PCT, it's like you either have to, you don't just, like if somebody's just stopped at a random spot, you're not just going to like butt in and join them. Like, but if someone's sitting at a shelter, that's a communal space, like I can join you without it being intrusive. So I really, really liked that a lot. And I think it allowed for so much easier conversation with people. Whereas on the PCT, clearly no shelters. So it's much easier to just camp with who you know rather than camp in these like communal spaces, quote unquote, where you share it with someone else, even if you didn't prefer it when you got there, but then they turn out to be great. Yeah, it just kind of, the AT allows more opportunities.
Now that right there, that was solid. That was more than just a hot take. That was, backing it up, showing your work and very thoughtful answer on the difference and why you prefer that. I mean, that's outstanding. Really enjoyed that. Thank you, Jackrabbit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think hopefully that undoes my head-to-head PCT AT combat.
You were spoiling for a fight. I knew it. All right. So let's transition from trails now to this FKT, river to river FKT. And did you come up with this idea, this concept of taking on the FKT for river to river before or after you met Garmire?
Before. Yeah. So funny enough, I had taken Jeff on as a coach the week before I did it for the first time and I failed. And that was pure coincidence. But yes, I knew I was interested in this kind of stuff. I had done some others. I'd tried like other small FPTs. This was gonna be my first overnight effort, but it was. I picked him up as a coach the week before I tried my first time, and we barely even had any conversations. And I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do that like Saturday. Any thoughts? Like, clearly you know what you're doing." And he was like, "Nope, send it." I was like, "Got it."
So do you think that Jeff Garmire bears some responsibility in the failure on the first attempt? It sounds like, he should really shoulder a lot of the blame here.
Doc, I think you bring up a great point. It's kind of surprising he hasn't brought it up. I know it's bearing a lot of weight on his shoulders daily, but I want to take some of that off. I forgive him. No, I was clueless, man. I mean, same way, just like starting with through hiking. No idea what I'm doing on FKTs. Just like winging it.
Don't
Yeah.
let that get in the way. Just go out there and give it a shot and learn. You're on the job, man. On the job training.
Exactly. I think that's the best way to do it. I did the same with like ultra running races, same way. I had a lot of failures in that too, and just went out and blew up into a million pieces and was like, that is not how you do it. Don't do that. Got it.
And so what went wrong in the first attempt, and what did you change for the successful FKT?
Yeah, so there's a big change in between. On the first time was unsupported, and then the second time was supported. So that was going to be a big change in a lot of the factors. But I think a big thing was, I think attitude. I think I felt a lot more confident as far as my abilities, and also I think a lot of the uncertainty the first time was with my pack and like what I had in it, and then the supported eliminated that. And then also the big difference too was at the time of the year we had gone, it was quite dry, and we had been told it was going to be like extremely dry. So there was periods that me and my friend Squallow, if you're listening, we almost did it, not really. We just carried way too much water. Water's really heavy. We had like 4.5 liters for a section, and then 2 miles later we walk upon a creek that's flowing well, and we're like, what the hell? So like, okay, well, there's not going to be any more. We can't count on any more. And then we do it again. We stumble upon another creek, and we're just loading ourselves down. So we covered like 55 miles, but we were exhausted. And then I slept in like a bed of chiggers, which is like oat mites apparently, and they give the worst bites. I had never heard of such a demonic insect. They bite you. It's like a little mosquito bite. Cool, no problem. You itch it, life goes on. These bites persist for weeks, 3 weeks. I was going to work with hydrocortisone in my pocket. I was like, I don't know if you've ever applied enough hydrocortisone, it's a mouthful, applied enough hydrocortisone where you have to check the dosage to make sure you're not ODing on ice cream. Like, I was concerned. It was a bad time. So I'll say I got a bit unlucky with the bugs, but yeah, just a little more experience and the support of having some good friends, like a lifetime friend. Honestly, was the guy who was supporting me. We've been friends since we were young kids. It was great, man. It was great, and yeah, I definitely like running more than hiking with the pack. I think I'm transitioning into more runner than hiker. Maybe that's a crime to say on here.
Well, let's argue about that for a little while. No, just kidding. Hey, the River to River Trail, where is it located? How long is it?
River to River Trails in southern Illinois. Starts out in the Shawnee National Forest, 165 miles. It goes from basically Illinois comes down to like an arrowhead shape, and the V of that arrowhead is two rivers. It's the Mississippi River and the Ohio River, and those form the southern border, and then they converge. I think the Ohio feeds into the Mississippi, and then so you go from the Ohio River straight east or west, or I guess if you start at the Ohio, you're heading west to the Mississippi. So Elizabethtown, Illinois to Grand Tower, Illinois, and the way to do it seemingly is you got to dip your foot or dip your hand in one river, scramble all the way across, and then do the same in the other. Don't go too far in the Mississippi though; it's a scary river.
Start off by dipping into the Ohio. You dip into some oat mites along the middle somewhere, and then you dip in the Mississippi to finish it off. I got it. Now, 165 miles. How long did it take you? What was the FKT?
The previous FKT was unsupported, strong guys, and that was the overall. They did it in 2 days, 17 hours. I did it supported in 2 days, 7 hours, and like 30 minutes. So 55 hours. So just right around 3 miles an hour for the whole time.
Okay. And how much sleep did you get?
So that was it's still a big variable for me, because I think if I went back, I could do it faster. But to answer your question, the first night I got almost a full night's sleep. So I did like 66 miles in about 15 and a half hours. And then we went straight to the hotel. I ate a Tupperware container filled to the brim with spaghetti I had pre-prepared, like vacuumed a Snickers down without even biting it, and shotgunned a Dr. Pepper and was asleep in 3 minutes, and woke up, put my shoes back on, rode back out to the trail, and got started at like 7 a.m. So I think I got like 6 hours the first night, and then the next night, tricky. I got a 2-hour nap and a 3-hour nap. So I think a grand total of right around 10 and a half, 11 hours.
And finishing it in 2 days, 7 hours, 30 something minutes. How much time do you think you could shave off, based just on your experience and thinking, here's where I cut some time?
I think I could cut a lot of that sleep. And with the sleep comes with the transition periods. So like, for example, I stayed in like a teeny little hotel. I really wanted to try and get like 75, 80 miles done the first day, but I was just like, it got dark and cold and the trail got really rutty. I was like falling down a lot. I was like, no, scrap it. Let's go. And so we had like a 20-minute drive to this hotel, right? So that's 40 minutes right there. Cut that out just driving, not even including the sleep part. Or maybe just like sleeping on the trail as well, just sleeping on the ground versus like the hotel. This is all like learning to me, because maybe that hotel, sleeping in the bed, quality sleep is really, really valuable, and I'm undervaluing it at this point. But I think overall I could probably cut I think I could get it under 48 hours. I really think I could go sleepless in night one. And then I think once I got within striking distance, it's just, can I make it to that point in the night where I'm like, okay, I'm close enough to lock in and just go. Like, yeah.
I'm seeing the scientist in you, the biologist, in that analyzing the variables here. What are the most important variables? If I take this out, if I change this, am I undervaluing this? This is this something you're going to come back to, or you know what, you've done it, you're going to move on to the next adventure?
That's a really tough one. I really like this idea of like refining something a lot. I think through hiking as a whole, like has really drawn me. I think this idea of getting like your pack lighter, more refined, all these things, like I think that is something I really enjoy. Like, so I think to the same point, like to go back on the same trail and like try and go faster. You know, I think somebody like John Kelly, who's done the Barclays, he had like this shootout with Damian Hall, another guy who was running the Barclay this year. They had a shootout on the Pennine Way in England, and they're like two really awesome runners, and they just like got this record to a point where he was like, no, like it can't get any faster. So I think the idea of doing something like that would be really awesome. But this still's kind of in the middle of nowhere, so I don't think I'll have any like super awesome contenders, but maybe. But I think I don't know. Part of me is always like, and I think this is true with like a lot of endurance athletes or people who get into through hiking. It's like this escalation protocol, right? It's like I gotta go further, I gotta go harder, I gotta go faster, I gotta do more, longer, bigger. And so with that in mind, it's like I want to do a longer trail or a more contested trail that has like more serious efforts on it. Something like that is definitely appealing.
Now, fun fact, Jackrabbit, both John Kelly and Damian Hall have been on the podcast before. They were on last season. So
no kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'll have to check it out.
I've talked to a lot of Barkley competitors. In fact, as we're talking tonight, Jasmine Paris's episode is coming out on Friday.
Dude, you legend. That is going to be an awesome interview. Yeah, I have listened to a handful of the times she's spoken about it. You're definitely going to have some good questions for her. That's going to be a cool interview to listen to.
Yeah, it's already done. It's already in the can. It's ready to come out on Friday. So tune in, find out what happened.
Nice. Heck yeah. Yeah, those people are like on another level, and I just love their mentality and learning about them. It's just so captivating to me, like the difference and usually how soft-spoken these people are. You know, like what motivates them is so different than what motivates so many people who do similar things. It's really interesting getting a peek inside their brains.
Okay. Now, you've done the AT, you've done the PCT. Any pressure on you to do the CTT? Becoming a triple crowner?
Of course. I'll say this. I don't want to give too much away. Me and Jeff Garmire are scheming up something big for next year. It includes the CDT. So I'm definitely planning on doing the CDT next year. And that will be Triple Crown. But yeah, it's on my radar. I want to do it like the other two trails. I know very little about it. I like it that way. I don't want to know the cool trail towns. I don't want to know I know the CT has a lot of alternates. I don't want to know which way I should or shouldn't take. I've stayed away from that stuff. So I like it that way. Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be interesting I definitely like the people component, like I was talking about with the AT and the PCT. It's a bit more remote and less people, so we'll see how that element goes. But yeah, it's on the radar. I think I've blocked off next year. It's getting back on a nice through hike.
Now, you've intrigued me because you said you're scheming up something that includes the CDT. I can think of at least one other thing I know that includes the CDT. So as a subsection, right? So I'm not going to go any deeper than that, but I'd be really interested to hear about your activities next year. Have you come back on a future episode and tell us all about it?
Yes, definitely. Just know that Jeff is an expert on something like this. May have done it himself. So, and I think the way we have talked about doing it would be probably, I don't know if it's ever been done before. So, yeah, we're working on something pretty big, and I got to talk to him. He's got Cocodona 250 coming up, so he's a hard man to get a hold of right now. But keep your eyes on him during that. I think he's ready.
Okay, will do. Hey, Jackrabbit, you know where we are right now?
Where we at? Wait, are we 3/4 of the way? We got 500 miles to Katahdin?
That's right. That's right.
Nice.
Hiking
Nice.
hacks.
And that is the juncture where we find the hiking hacks. It's time for your hiking hack. And this segment is sponsored by the outdoor clothing brand Magnet Designs. Thru Hiker owned and making quality ultralight craft outdoor gear by hand in Bend, Oregon. Designed on trail, built for trail life. Visit magnetdesigns.com with no E in design. So, Jackrabbit, what trail wisdom have you been holding back to share with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better?
Good question. I think the wisdom I would share is kind of back to what I was saying. That I kind of I got into the fighting of the HTPC, and I got away from what I was trying to say, which was about being your first through hike. And I think that is the difference between a lot of these trails. But yeah, for your first through hike, I think my wisdom is embrace being an amateur. You know, the word amateur comes from the Latin word that means lover. You know, like, love not knowing what's going on. Like, love falling into circumstances that aren't 100% perfect. Love making mistakes. I think you absorb so much more information when you're just getting started, and when you're absorbent to this information, it just opens so much more relations. Listen and watch, whether it's a way to shrink your pack or just like little tiny things that make your quality of life better, like, you know, knowing exactly to the milliliter how much water it takes to cook a Northside. Like, those are the tiny details that you're not going to find on a, you know, article online about how to hike the AT, but that's like the key details that like a through hiker who's spent a lot of time out there knows. So those kinds of things, pay attention. Yeah, I don't know, just enjoy not knowing, enjoy being a rookie, enjoy learning, because eventually you're going to reach a point where you think you know, and you think you know what you're doing, and you have opinions on how others are doing it, and you think you know what's fast or heavy or slow or light. And, you know, like I said, you can't really undo the knowledge you have. So it's hard to not form those opinions, but you can't when you don't know what's good or bad or anything. So enjoy that. It's magical. And I think, like anything, like being a total novice is typically everyone's favorite time getting into a hobby. So yeah, just don't forget to look around, and yeah, and enjoy being a rookie.
That is spectacular. Enjoy being a rookie, enjoy being an amateur. And I love when you said just love not knowing what's going on. And I think if you ask Mrs. Doc, that kind of describes a lot of my life. So enjoy that part where you're not sure exactly what's happening, and just soak it all up and enjoy it. That's great.
I mean, it's got you this far, right? I mean, there's only a few options. Like, you're gonna go home or you're gonna keep going. So, you know, like, if you're gonna keep going, then it's water under the bridge. So yeah, just soak it in, because eventually you're gonna come back and you're gonna pay bills, and you're gonna even miss the bad times when that crazy guy was, you know, you couldn't get rid of him.
When he beat you up in fart baseball. That's right. So
right.
There you have it. We're just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Jackrabbit. Want to thank him for joining us this week. Connor, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
I think I mostly just use Instagram. I don't have X or TikTok or anything like that. Maybe I should. But yeah, my Instagram is Jackrabbit Hikes. Should be Jackrabbit Runs right now. I'm not doing a lot of hiking, but yeah, next year. Yeah, Jackrabbit Hikes.
Okay. Remember to check out Hiker Trash Radio on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips you want to share with me, you can send it to me at hikertrashradio@gmail.com.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, we can't always be on the trail. And when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So Jackrabbit, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. It could be a book, a movie, documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. What do you have for us?
Okay. This is my kind of segment. I have so many things that come to mind. I think I would definitely say I've swallowed the red pill that is trail media. I think the first thing that comes to mind, especially if you're a trail runner, is Unbreakable, which is the story of the Western States 100. It documents the 2010 Western States, and a few of the racers who are now a couple of them are names that a lot of hikers recognize, especially like Killian. But yeah, it talks about their amazing race, and I think the most important part of that to me, or the most interesting, is like the difference in personalities among these people. Clearly, they all share the trait of being hyper competitive, but it's just really interesting how, and they also share the trait that they love being outside and being in trail and, just being alone on a ridgeline. But it's pretty interesting how these four dudes who are at the front of the pack can live such wildly different lives, and still find themselves in the exact same shoes beside each other. Yeah, super good. I'd definitely say that. And then I would be remiss to say, if I didn't say, check out Free Outside, which is Jeff's documentary about his unsupported Colorado Trail record. It's awesome. It's funny. I think, like I said, like getting out on those longer distances is pretty crazy. And I think, I don't know if a lot of people know this, unsupported, you can't take anything from beginning to finish. So a trail like the PCT or the AT, which is over 2,000 miles, it'd be impossible to go unsupported. You couldn't carry, maybe you could, 2,000 days or 2,000 miles of food. So my point being is, a trail like the Colorado Trail is really right there on the edge of what you could do unsupported. So that kind of stuff is really interesting to me, especially like choices on food and gear, and how do you pack for 500 miles in one resupply, So I think those two are really good, and both get me super stoked to get on trail.
Jeff Garmire, action movie star, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Who doesn't love a film that's like 20% fart jokes?
All right.
What have we not asked you?
And before we wrap things up tonight, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What did I miss?
Nothing about me, I'd say, but I think, alluding to it about Jeff's documentary, I think just these really long races and efforts, I just think are so interesting. On a similar note, like Camille Herron just ran 600 miles at Lululemon's The Further Project. Crazy. And a big part of that was them gathering a bunch of data on it and science and learning about this and what your body does when you're doing these kind of things. So yeah, I think that is super, super interesting, and it's really at the cutting edge of this stuff, figuring out the nutrition and so on. And, she was really candid in her interview that I listened to. And, she talked about having really serious gastro issues and even some incontinence. And, I relate to that. I also number two'd a lot on my FKT effort. It was borderline alarming. So I was like, I'm glad, one, I'm not alone. And two, that the science is catching up to these bowel issues. We got to get this figured out. I think everybody who's going pretty far can get behind this. But yeah, what was I dying to tell you about? I was dying to tell you about these scientific improvements in the BM world.
No, I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say that number one, you're glad you weren't alone out there, and I thought you were gonna compound that by saying, and number two, that'd have been the perfect segue. You missed an opportunity there, friend.
See, you're clearly the pro at this. This is clearly my first time. I gotta take notes.
Hey, you're figuring it out. That's all right. Hey, we are finished. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, Connor. I wish you the very best in your future adventures. Can't wait to hear more about next year's adventure, and we'll hope you'll consider coming back at some point and sharing some more stories with us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think hopefully I'll have enough adventures to keep yapping about. That'll be pretty interesting. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you having me on, Doc. You made this super easy on me. You're a great host.
Just two guys talking in the woods. It's awesome. As we close up today, any shout outs to friends or family?
I definitely have to shout out my two friends who got me through this FKT, helped me get on here. My friend Giggles, who also, she, total BA, quick aside, scrambled across the country. She finished ski season, comes over, drives, crews me for the first 100 miles of my FKT. Then she's got somewhere to be. Where does she have to be? She's driving to Missouri to set her own unsupported FKT on the Ozark Trail. Yes, total BA. But yes, shout out Gigs. Shout out my lifetime friend, Tanner Hops. He was there the whole time. We got through some sketchy residential areas where I am walking through a rural, alone private driveway with a headlamp on. Don't do that. You probably look like you're up to no good. Those two, my family, my dad, all those people. If they're listening, I love you. And thanks for getting me all this way. Now that people know about Pedro.
All right. And I will do a shout out to our common friend, Jeff Garmeyer, in case he's listening out there.
Yeah, of course. Shout out Jeff. He's the man. He's a great coach. Hit him up if you ever are looking for a coach. But he's a great influence and a great friend.
Give him more than a week's notice before your first FKT.
Yeah, he likes that. He definitely prefers that. Otherwise, you're going to get a slap on the back and go get him.
All right, everybody. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Always remember, trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if your poor Pedro Martinez bobblehead is lost in the brush somewhere. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.